Dawn poured golden honey over the Nyarama grasslands, a vast wilderness where the sky seemed to touch the earth with bold strokes of vibrant light. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the morning mist, painting a hazy, sacred scene. From afar, the cooing of doves echoed, while a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and damp soil softened by last night's rain. An old pickup truck rumbled slowly on a winding gravel path, cutting through thorny acacia and wild palms. Its paint had long faded, dotted with marks of time and sun. Behind the wheel sat Arun, a young ranger of Nyarama Wildlife Reserve. He drove silently, his gaze following every shifting leaf in the wind. A pair of binoculars dangled from his neck beside a radio and a small journal used for tracking. Arun's face was sun-darkened, weathered by years spent roaming the open plains. His deep brown eyes held the weight of both storms and stillness, of blood and memory. Arun did not grow up in the city. He was a child of the forest, born and raised in a small village on the edge of the reserve. While other children learned to read under lamplight, Arun learned to track gazelles by moonlight. His father, Dev, was one of Nyarama's first professionally trained rangers. To young Arun, his father was a hero. He could read the wind with a raised hand, name birds by their calls, and stand unshaken before a charging bull elephant. But the land he loved so dearly was the same land that took his life. One night, when Arun was just 10, gunshots rang out across the forest near their village. He ran with his mother toward the patrol site. The image that met him would forever be etched into his soul. His father's body lay amidst a slaughtered herd of gazelles, blood soaking into the earth, his eyes still open, filled with anguish and helplessness. The poachers left everything behind except the trauma. At the modest funeral, with the wind howling through the trees, his mother whispered tearfully, "You don't have to walk the same path as your father. This land has taken him. I don't want it to take you too." But Arun did not respond. The next morning, he quietly retrieved his father's old binoculars and began learning the signs his father once taught him. Nearly 20 years passed. Arun was now the head ranger of Nyarama's southern zone, the region with the highest number of illegal poaching incidents and the most dangerous. He wasn't a public speaker, nor did he enjoy paperwork, but he could hear the breath of the earth, read the movement of a single bent blade of grass, and converse with nature through silence. His colleagues nicknamed him the Living Instinct. Once, noticing a few bent stems and dried mud under tire tracks, he traced an illegal rhino horn transport vehicle and shut down a cross-border trafficking ring. But today, something felt off. Turning into the eastern plains, an area that hadn't been patrolled in days, Arun noticed fresh blood. It was dark, thick, and trailed unnaturally across the golden grass. He stopped the truck, slipped on gloves, and began to examine the scene. The blood didn't drip. It streamed, and alongside it were dragging claw marks. A large animal was injured. Arun's heart pounded. He didn't call headquarters, partly because radio signals were unreliable here, but primarily because of a deeper instinct. Something was waiting ahead, and he had to face it alone. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, bringing tranquilizers, antiseptics, and a small blade. Following the blood trail carefully, he came upon a dense acacia thicket, where the scent of iron mingled with the labored breath of something clinging to life. And there, beneath the scattered canopy, Arun saw it. A fully grown male lion, its muscular body collapsed beside a tree trunk. Its dark mane was matted with blood, and its torso was tightly bound by a thick steel wire, the crude yet brutal trap poachers often used to snare antelope. The wire had cut deep into its flesh, and blood was still oozing from the wound. Its amber eyes were half open, their gaze weak but not hostile. When its eyes met Arun's, in that strange moment, there was no growl, no resistance, only pain and exhaustion. Arun didn't move. He knew that a single wrong step could end them both, but he couldn't leave. Slowly, he whispered, "I didn't come to hurt you. I came to help." And the lion didn't react. It closed its eyes as if to say, "Go ahead." Time seemed to stop. Each second that passed was another moment. Arun pulled the wire, cut a segment, wiped away the blood, and applied medicine. His hands bled from the wire's sharp edges, sweat soaked his back, and dry grass clung to his clothes. But he didn't stop until the final coil fell to the ground and the beast was free. The lion did not roar. It stood up, staggered a few steps, then paused. It turned its head to look at Arun, not like a wild animal looks at a man, but as if there was a silent promise between them. "What's your name?" Arun asked softly, then smiled. "I'll call you Sanu. It means early morning." Sanu turned away, stepped into the tall grass, and vanished. But that wasn't the last time they met. Since that day, every time Arun went on patrol, he felt a pair of eyes following him. A prominent, golden figure, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden. Once he heard a deep roar that scared a pack of hyenas away from the ranger's outpost. Another time, he found lion tracks circling his camp at dawn. When a group of tourists got stranded on the road and an angry herd of lost elephants began approaching, Arun drove out to rescue them. Surrounded and out of options, Sanu appeared once more, from a distance, blocking the path of the elephants, roaring so powerfully it slowed them down just long enough for the tourists to escape. After that, no one doubted it anymore. Ranger Arun and the lion Sanu, a strange but steadfast, invisible friendship, became a living legend across Nyarama. Villagers lit incense under new moons, praying for the forest spirit to protect them. Children told tales of the lion with grateful eyes. Wildlife researchers came to observe, but no one ever got close to Sanu. He only appeared when Arun was alone. And to this day, Arun still sits on the highest rock every weekend evening, gazing over the golden plains. He knows that somewhere, between blades of grass and the last rays of sunlight, a silent shadow is watching him. Not out of debt, not out of instinct, but because, between man and beast, sometimes gratitude shapes loyalty. That night, Arun didn't sleep. He prepared his supplies, charged his radio, and brought along a tranquilizer gun, the only weapon he ever allowed himself to carry in case of confrontation. But deep down, Arun wasn't relying on the weapon. He was relying on something else. Before leaving the ranger post, he turned toward the forest and whispered, "If you're still out there, Sanu, help me again." The western rocky path was narrow and rugged. The truck couldn't go far, so Arun had to walk. Beneath the pale moonlight, he crept past gravel and dry brush, his ears tuned to even the faintest sound. There were no human footprints, but the grass was parted unnaturally, clear evidence of recent movement. Near midnight, he found the hideout, a makeshift tent beneath the shade of a broad canopied tree. The air still smelled faintly of tobacco. Arun crouched behind a bush and waited, and then he saw three men in faded hats, carrying night vision scopes and silenced M16 rifles, patrolling silently around the tent. His stomach tightened. These weren't ordinary poachers. One misstep, one strong gust of wind could all fall apart. Arun reached for his radio. No signal. "I can't call for backup," he thought. "I have to do something." Just as he was about to back away in search of a safer position, a low, deep growl echoed from the right. Not a furious roar, but a warning. That golden shadow swept by like the wind, making almost no sound except grass rustling. The three poachers immediately turned around, aiming their rifles in the direction of the noise. At that moment, Arun charged forward, firing the first tranquilizer dart at the man at the rear. A cry rang out, and chaos erupted. Sanu leaped from the darkness, not to attack directly, but to roar thunderously, drawing their attention. One man fired wildly, flashlight beams darting in every direction. The sounds of footsteps, gunfire, and the growl of a wild animal blended into a symphony of survival and the untamed. Arun used the confusion to fire the second shot. The third man ran but was blocked by Sanu, not clawing, not attacking, just standing still like a silent wall. The man panicked and collapsed, and Arun quickly tied him up. When the ranger team arrived at dawn, all was quiet. The three poachers were captured alive, along with their rifles and modern tracking equipment. No one was harmed, and Sanu, as always, vanished into the morning mist. When the captain asked how Arun managed to take down all three alone, he stared into the distance and replied, "I wasn't alone." A week later, Arun received an invitation from the International Conservation Agency asking him to share the story of the ambush in the dark at a global conference, but he declined. He wrote back, "We don't do this work to tell stories. We do it so that nature can have a voice of its own." Every morning, Arun still drove across the grasslands. Some days there were no lion tracks. Some days he heard distant roars, but he never needed confirmation. He knew a lion was still watching over him in the untouched sunlight. Not out of debt, not out of instinct, but because, between human and beast, some bonds go beyond species, bonds built on trust, loyalty, and unspoken understanding. A week after the poachers were arrested, Nyarama fell into an uneasy calm, still yet alert. It was as though after the storm, nature too was holding its breath. But Arun couldn't shake the feeling that the danger hadn't passed. Intelligence reports suggested the captured group was just the outer layer, part of a much larger network potentially tied to high-ranking officials and foreign investors. Arun knew if this syndicate kept infiltrating deeper, rare animals like Sanu, alpha predators essential to entire ecosystems, would be their ultimate targets. Arun returned to the northern outpost on a quiet Monday afternoon and saw a young woman beside Mr. Rathi, the park's head conservationist. She wore a dusty windbreaker, carried a backpack, and her lightly curled hair spilled over her shoulders. "This is Meera Patel," Rathi introduced, "an investigative journalist from Wild Earth Review. She's been cleared to enter Nyarama to cover the poaching crisis. I want you to take her with you." Arun frowned slightly. He didn't like having outsiders tailing him, especially not press members. But Meera's eyes weren't those of someone chasing headlines. They were calm and resolute, like someone who had seen truths deeper than words. "I don't write for fame, Arun," Meera said. "I write so that creatures like Sanu don't disappear from this world." The name Sanu made Arun pause. He hadn't expected a journalist from the city to know about the golden shadow of the plains. "How do you know that name?" he asked. "I read your report last month," she replied. "But that's not what convinced me. It was a photo, captured by a trap camera near the western cliffs." She pulled a photo from her bag. Sanu, standing atop a rocky ridge, mane billowing in the wind, the sun setting behind him. No one knew that the camera still worked. No one, except someone persistent. Arun chuckled softly. "Well then, welcome to the journey with nature." They began a 3-day patrol from the southern fringe up to the Drystone Highlands, a harsh landscape with unforgiving weather and brutal terrain. This area was also the migratory intersection for several key animal herds. Along the way, Meera quietly took notes, snapped photos of paw prints, and listened as Arun shared his deep knowledge: how to read nature's signs, how antelope evade traps using sound, and how lions distinguish familiar engines from threats. On the second night, camped beside a dried riverbed, Meera asked, "Have you ever thought about leaving this place? With your experience, any global conservation organization would hire you as an advisor." Arun looked up at the starry sky. "I used to think about it. But then I realized, if I leave, who will stay?" "And what about Sanu?" Meera asked gently. Arun was quiet for a long moment. "He doesn't need me, but if the day comes when he falls, I want to be the first to know. So at least no one can say he died unseen." Meera didn't reply. But how she looked at Arun that night changed, not just with admiration, but with an unspoken bond, a quiet recognition between two people who loved nature in their ways. The next morning, as they neared a rocky ridge, Arun noticed something strange. Fresh human footprints, heading deep into a restricted zone, an area off limits unless for emergencies. Following the trail, they found an abandoned camp and left in haste. Inside were scattered supplies, a map, and, most notably, a military-grade GPS device. Arun's brow furrowed. He checked the tracker and found it had been active for 48 hours before shutting off near their location. "Someone's been tracking the animal herds," Arun muttered, "but not to protect them, to intercept them." Just then a strange sound came from behind. A growl. They turned. On the sunlit ridge, Sanu stood tall. His eyes locked on Arun's, then turned west, toward a grove of dead trees swaying unnaturally, like something hidden was watching. Sanu growled again, longer this time. A warning. "Someone's coming," Arun said quickly. "We need to move." And they ran. But Arun didn't run away. He ran toward the direction of Sanu's gaze, because when nature speaks again, he will not ignore it. As the sun dipped behind the ancient baobab trees, its orange glow blanketed the Nyarama plains like a warm farewell. Arun and Mira stood atop the ridge, looking over the land they had given their hearts to. Below them, a golden figure walked calmly through the tall grass, each step dignified and deliberate. It was Sanu, the lion of the savannah, Arun's silent and loyal companion. "How long do you think Sanu will stay?" Mira asked, her eyes still on the lion's silhouette. "No one knows," Arun replied. "But I believe wherever he goes, his spirit, the spirit of the free and the wild, will always remain here, in every blade of grass, in every passing breeze." As night fell, the first stars appeared above the Nyarama sky, marking another day's end and the story's close. A story not just about man and nature, but about courage, sacrifice, and a friendship that transcended species.